pray that you would speak through me what you have put on my heart to say, and that they would leave with something that you want to challenge their hearts with. In your son's name, amen.
Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. This was the warning from Yoda to a young Anakin Skywalker. Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi met Anakin, a gifted, determined, and compassionate young boy enslaved along with his mother on the planet of Tatooine. Sensing he could be the chosen one to bring balance to the Force, they were able to arrange for Anakin's freedom to take him back with them to be trained as a Jedi. Unfortunately, they are not able to free Anakin's mother also, and he must leave her to fulfill what others consider to be his destiny. However, when he comes before the Jedi Council to be considered for training, they sense much fear in him, specifically over the possibility of losing his mother. This is when Yoda gives this prophetic fear, anger, suffering warning. And sadly, we see this progression manifest itself in Anakin. He is haunted by visions of his mother's suffering, and when he finds her, she is imprisoned by Tusken Raiders. She dies in his arms, and in anger and vengeance, he kills every one of the Tusken Raiders. His anger and hatred toward the Jedi Council grows as he feels they are holding him back from what he can be. And Palpatine, the evil Sith Lord, is feeding him lies as to the power and control he can have if he comes to the dark side. He has nightmares of his wife Padme dying in childbirth and wants to do everything he can to prevent these nightmares from becoming true, like those he had of his mother. In aiding in the killing of a Jedi Master, he succumbs to the dark side. He leads an attack on the Jedi Temple, even killing the younglings. Padme confronts him about this and begs him to change, but believing she is now against him too, he force chokes her. Then Anakin unleashes his lightsaber on Obi-Wan, who trained him, and declares he loved him as a brother. And in the battle, Obi-Wan sears off Anakin's legs with his lightsaber, and he slowly slides into the river of lava and burns. Palpatine finds him barely alive and creates his ultimate evil enforcer, Darth Vader. When he arises in this new body armor, his first thoughts are about Padme, and Palpatine responds saying, "It seems in your anger you killed her." The one thing he wanted to prevent, he caused. Such suffering, the death of innocent young children, the loss of trusted friendship with Obi-Wan, the loss of his beloved Padme, the loss of himself, now trapped in a suit of armor, which he now masks all his fear, anger, hate, and suffering. He began his young life as a slave and now lives his life a slave to the suit, his choices, and his inner turmoil. But this same cycle for movies, it is not. Fear leading to anger, leading to hate, and ultimately to suffering is seen through Bible characters as well. And we are going to be looking at Saul in 1 Samuel. If you want to be in 1 Samuel, we are going to jump around a lot, and we got a lot of passages to cover to get this all down. So, Saul is a tall, handsome young Benjamite. He was sent on a quest to look for his family's lost donkeys, and he ended up being anointed to be by Samuel to be Israel's first king. When he is chosen by Lot to be presented to the Israelites, he's found hiding in the supplies. Given the confusing circumstances, I feel at this point in his story, his trepidation with his inadequacy is warranted. But this initial fear doesn't wane. Rather, other circumstances grow this initial fear until sadly it controls him and brings the predicted anger, hate, and suffering with it. Saul was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 42 years. After triumphant defeat of the Ammonites through the Spirit of the Lord, and one in which Saul gives victory, credit to God for the victory, we continue with Saul's story in 1 Samuel 13, 5-14. So that's where we'll be first.
1 Samuel 13, starting in verse 5. The Philistines assembled to fight Israel with 3,000 chariots, 6,000 charioteers, and soldiers as numerous as the sand on the seashore. They went up and camped at Michmash, east of Bethaven. When the Israelites saw that their situation was critical and that their army was hard-pressed, they hid in caves and thickets among the rocks and pits and cisterns. Some Hebrews even crossed the Jordan to the land of Gad and Gilead. Saul remained at Gilgal, and all the troops with him were quaking with fear. He waited 7 days, the time set by Samuel, but Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and Saul's men began to scatter. So he said, "Bring me the burnt offering and the fellowship offerings." And Saul offered up the burnt offering. Just as he finished making the offering, Samuel arrived, and Saul went out to greet him. "What have you done?" asked Samuel. Saul replied, "When I saw that the men were scattering and that you did not come at the set time," the fact that he has the audacity to say that, I can't even believe it, "and that the Philistines were assembling at Michmash, I thought, now the Philistines will come down against me at Gilgal, and I have not sought the Lord's favor. So I felt compelled to offer the burnt offering." "You have done a foolish thing," Samuel said. "You have not kept the command the Lord your God gave you. If you had, he would have established your kingdom over Israel for all time. But now your kingdom will not endure. The Lord has sought out a man after his own heart and appointed him ruler of his people, because you have not kept the Lord's command." Saul, out of growing impatience and fear, takes matters into his own hands and makes the sacrifice without Samuel. Not only that, instead of owning up to his fear, he makes excuses. The Philistines were gathering, the men were scattering, and Samuel was late. Because of his anxiety-driven, impatient choice, Saul is told that his kingdom will not endure and that God seeks a man after his own heart. There are a mix of different timelines out there, but this is probably only about 2 years into Saul's reign. And remember, he reigns for like 42. We know how long he reigned. So these prophecies through Samuel easily fuel Saul's already present fears of inadequacy. So now we jump ahead 13 years, and we're going to 1 Samuel 15. And in verses 2 and 3, Samuel gives Saul these instructions. "This is what the Lord Almighty says. I will punish the Amalekites for what they did to Israel when they waylaid them as they came up from Egypt. Now go, attack the Amalekites, and totally destroy all that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys." So is the instruction, is it pretty clear? Right? Okay, just get rid of everything. So this is what transpires. We'll jump to verse 7 and through 29. "Then Saul attacked the Amalekites all the way from Havilah to Shur, near the eastern border of Egypt. He took Agag, king of the Amalekites, alive, and all his people he totally destroyed with the sword. But Saul and the army spared Agag and the best of the sheep and cattle, the fat calves and lambs, everything that was good. These they were unwilling to destroy completely, but everything that was despised and weak they totally destroyed. Then the word of the Lord came to Samuel. I regret that I have made Saul king, because he has turned away from me and has not carried out my instructions. Samuel was angry, and he cried out to the Lord all that night. Early in the morning, Samuel got up and went to meet Saul, but he was told, Saul has gone to Carmel. There he has set up a monument in his own honor and has turned and gone down to Gilgal. When Samuel reached him, Saul said, The Lord bless you. I have carried out the Lord's instructions. But Samuel said, What then is this bleating of sheep in my ears? What is this lowing of cattle that I hear? Saul answered, The soldiers brought them from the Amalekites. They spared the best of the sheep and cattle to sacrifice to the Lord your God, but we totally destroyed the rest. Enough, Samuel said to Saul. Let me tell you what the Lord said to me last night. Tell me, Saul replied. Samuel said, although you were once small in your own eyes, did you not become the head of the tribes of Israel? The Lord anointed you king over Israel, and he sent you on a mission, saying, go and completely destroy those wicked people, the Amalekites. Wage war against them until you have wiped them out. Why did you not obey the Lord? Why did you pounce on the plunder and do evil in the eyes of the Lord? But I did obey the Lord, Saul said. I went on the mission the Lord assigned me. I completely destroyed the Amalekites and brought back Agag, their king. The soldiers took sheep and cattle from the plunder, the best of what was devoted to God, in order to sacrifice them to the Lord your God at Gilgal. But Samuel replied, does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obeying the Lord? To obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than the fat of rams. For rebellion is like the sin of divination, and arrogance like the evil of idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king. Then Saul said to Samuel, I have sinned. I violated the Lord's command and your instructions. I was afraid of the men, and so I gave in to them. Now I beg you, forgive my sin and come back with me, so that I may worship the Lord. But Samuel said to him, I will not go back with you. You have rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected you as king over Israel. As Samuel turned to leave, Saul caught hold of the hem of his robe, and it tore. Samuel said to him, the Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today, and has given it to one of your neighbors, to one better than you. He who is the glory of Israel does not lie or change his mind, for he is not a human being that he should change his mind. We can consider Samuel's words in 1 Samuel 13 as like a foretelling, and now here in 1 Samuel 15, Saul has been given his official rejection notice. He and his family line will be king no longer, because he allowed his fears to control his actions rather than putting his trust in full obedience in the Lord. The Spirit of the Lord left him. This is only 15 years into his 42-year reign. So an evil spirit from the Lord torments him, and his fears weigh heavily upon him. Subsequently, then, David is now introduced in the story, and we know who David becomes. So he is secretly anointed as the next king by Samuel, and he plays the harp to soothe Saul's tortured soul. He kills Goliath and begins leading campaign battles for Saul. And now we're jumping to 1 Samuel 18, starting in verse 5. So I hope all the jumping is okay, and I wanted to make sure we did this story well. So thank you for your patience. Whatever mission Saul sent him on, David was so successful that Saul gave him a high rank in the army. This pleased all the troops and Saul's officers as well. When the men were returning home after David had killed the Philistine, the women came out from all the towns of Israel to meet King Saul with singing and dancing, with joyful songs, with timbrels and lyres. As they danced, they sang, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his tens of thousands. And we know from Mr. Rogers, what does tens of thousands mean? Uncountable. Saul was very angry. This refrain displeased him greatly. They have credited David with tens of thousands, he thought, but me with only thousands. What more can he get but the kingdom? The next day, an evil spirit from God came forcefully on Saul. He was prophesying in his house while David was playing the lyre as he usually did, and Saul had a spear in his hand, and he hurled it, saying to himself, I'll pin David to the wall. But David eluded him twice. Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with David, but had departed from Saul. So he sent David away from him and gave him command over 1,000 men, and David led the troops in their campaigns. In everything he did, he had great success because the Lord was with him. When Saul saw how successful he was afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David because he led them in their campaigns. So Saul's fear and jealousy of David has now turned to anger. Saul starts scheming ways to get him killed. He offers his daughter in marriage for 100 Philistine foreskins, hoping David will be killed in battle. but he kills double the requested number of Philistines and marries Saul's daughter, Michal. Saul tells his son Jonathan and his attendants to kill David, and he tries to pin him again to the wall with his spear. And then, when David does not show up for the new moon feast, as per a plan between Jonathan and David to discern Saul's true heart and motivation, we have 1 Samuel 20, 30 to 33. Saul's anger flared up at Jonathan, and he said to him, "You son of a perverse and rebellious woman, don't I know that you have sided with the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of the mother who bore you? As long as the son of Jesse lives on this earth, neither you nor your kingdom will be established. Now send someone to bring him to me, for he must die." "Why should he be put to death? What has he done?" Jonathan asked his father. But Saul hurled his spear at him to kill him. Then Jonathan knew that his father intended to kill David. Saul's fear and anger have now turned to hate. He has just tried to kill his own son because of his loyalty to David. After this, David escapes quickly and flees to Nob, where he asks the priest Ahimelech for food and a sword, but does not divulge the reason for his sudden needs and hastiness, hoping to protect the priest from Saul, who is now in pursuit of David himself. And now we're in 1 Samuel 22, starting in verse 6. Now Saul heard that David and his men had been discovered, and Saul was seated, spear in hand, under the tamarisk tree on the hill at Gibeah, with all his officials standing at his side. He said to them, "Listen, men of Benjamin, will the son of Jesse give all of you fields and vineyards? Will he make all of you commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds? Is that why you have all conspired against me? No one tells me when my son makes a covenant with the son of Jesse. None of you is concerned about me or tells me that my son has incited my servant to lie in wait for me as he does today." But Doeg the Edomite, who was standing with the Saul's officials, said, "I saw the son of Jesse come to Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, at Nob. Ahimelech inquired of the Lord for him. He also gave him provisions and the sword of Goliath the Philistine." Then the king sent for the priest Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, and all the men of his family who were the priests at Nob, and they all came to the king. Saul said, "Listen now, son of Ahitub." "Yes, my lord," he answered. Saul said to him, "Why have you conspired against me, you and the son of Jesse, giving him bread and a sword and inquiring of God for him, so that he has rebelled against me and lies in wait for me, as he does today?" Ahimelech answered the king, "Who of all your servants is as loyal as David, the king's son-in-law, captain of your bodyguard, and highly respected in your household? Was that the first time I inquired of God for him? Of course not. Let not the king accuse your servant of any of his father's family, for your servant knows nothing at all about this whole affair." But the king said, "You will surely die, Ahimelech, you and your whole family." Then the king ordered the guards at his side, "Turn and kill the priest of the Lord, because they too have sided with David. They knew he was fleeing, yet they did not tell me." But the king's officials were unwilling to raise a hand to strike the priests of the Lord. The king then ordered Doeg, "You turn and strike down the priests." So Doeg the Edomite turned and struck them down. That day he killed 85 men who wore the linen ephod. He also put to the sword Nob, the town of the priests, with its men and women, its children and infants, and its cattle, donkeys, and sheep. And here we have the suffering. Saul kills 85 priests and an entire town because of his obsessive fear and jealousy of David. His fear led to others' suffering as well as to his own. The Lord had left him. His thinking became completely irrational. David had done nothing but support him, and here he accuses his men and the priests of conspiring against him. This insane pursuit of David continues for about 8 years until Saul comes up against the Philistines in battle again. And then he receives no answer from the Lord, so he is so desperate that he consults a medium to bring Samuel back from the dead to give him direction, only to find out from dead Samuel that he and his sons will be with him the next day. And that next day, Saul is critically wounded in battle with the Philistines, and because his armor bearer is unwilling to run him through, Saul falls on his sword and dies. Saul's fears controlled him and led to eruptions of anger, raging hatred directed at his son, and needless, woeful suffering. And if this disheartening cycle can be seen in the Bible, then it is not just for entertainment purposes. It means this is a reality in our daily lives. It is found in varying degrees, from simple everyday family interactions to extreme heinous acts of violence. Because we've dealt with two more extreme examples thus far, let's consider a more commonplace everyday family one. When my son was in 3rd or 4th grade, he was doing a fabulous job on his spelling test. We don't know why, but he had gotten a perfect score up until and it was about February by now. We were working through his words for the next test one evening, and he was repeatedly struggling with getting just these few words right every time we did them. He was getting ready for bed, and suddenly he just shoved me, and I fell backward into the shower curtain. And if you've ever been tried to be caught by a shower curtain, it doesn't work. And somehow I caught myself, didn't conk my head on the tub, but it was a scary moment. I can still feel how it felt to almost fall. His actions seemed to come out of nowhere. But I happened to be teaching about 1 Samuel and the fear, anger, hate, suffering cycle at the time at school. And I realized that his anger was a reaction to that inner anxiety about having such a difficult time on these certain spelling words, because for him, it wasn't ever a problem. But what would a typical response of a parent be? In that situation, typically we'd just punish him for his seemingly unfounded act of aggression. And this is what we do in our world. We see and we point the finger at the action, but we're failing to meet those struggling in their fears. And we must also be mindful that the manifestation of these fears are not always outward acts of anger and hate. I was actually prompted by the Spirit to share this whole message because I happened upon a documentary about Chris Farley. He was a crazy, funny comedian, best known for the movie Tommy Boy and for the Saturday Night Live skit where he plays the motivational speaker Matt Foley who lives in a van down by the river. But Farley happened to be plagued with a fear of not being funny enough. He always wanted to make his father laugh and wanted to make people laugh. And he also feared being alone. And after each movie he made, he was always worried about how it would be received by fans and critics. And new leadership came on at NBC, and they cut him from the SNL cast, so he lost what family he had connected with there. His coping mechanism for the stress and anxiety became drugs and alcohol, and he was in and out of rehab 17 times. But these fears, the loathing he had for himself, and the lonely suffering inside of him was never fully vanquished. He died from a speedball, it was called, a concoction of morphine and cocaine at the age of 33. And he's just one example of so many individuals who are surrounded by people who love and care for them, yet they do not know how or refuse to let those people into their hurt, so this suffering cycle continues for them alone. So what do we need to do with this very real struggle of fear, anger, hate, and suffering that I see as a dominating factor behind both the quiet and screaming heartache in our world? First, we need to acknowledge it in ourselves. We're talking about fears here. We fear letting people know our fears. That is why the people around us only see the anger, hate, and suffering. it's possible that these outward manifestations of our fears have even hidden our fear from ourselves. To identify your fear, you may need to think about the last time you were angry, and maybe the times you were angry before that. I'm not talking about that righteous type anger Jesus displays at the temple. I'm talking about that self-driven anger that rages inside of you when you were hurt by what someone did or said, or if something didn't go your way and you struggled mightily to let it go. Ask the Lord to show you what fear you're holding onto that instigated that fuming. We will not get into the connections now, but perhaps like me, it's that same fear that we talked about when I did the distraction message back in September. I was like, oh, it's the same one. Then, after we just figure out what that fear is, we need to give that fear over to Jesus and embrace the perfect love he has for us that we read about in the call to worship this morning from 1 Samuel 4. If anyone acknowledges that Jesus is the Son of God, God lives in them and they in God. And so we know and rely on the love God has for us. God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God and God in them. There is no fear in love, but perfect love will drive out fear. Will this fear be driven out overnight? Probably not. We may need to give this fear over to God every day. We may need to allow his love into our hearts every day. Remember, Saul's fears controlled him because the Lord had left him. If we are going to experience healing from this fear and suffering cycle, we must let the Lord in. We cannot fear letting him know our fears. We can't push his love away because we feel unworthy of it because of how we've acted upon our fear. Jesus stands at the door and knocks. Fling that door open and let him come in. And finally, this same fear-driving out love that is healing our hearts, we need to share it with others. Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. There is a bumper sticker that I've seen a couple times now that says, everyone is going through something. And how true that is. We all have fears. We all have struggles. We're all in desperate need of God's love. And because of Jesus' sacrifice on the cross, we're all worthy of receiving it. May we stop judging others and be willing to extend to them the same loving grace God has given us. Let others know they do not need to live with their fear, that Jesus eagerly waits for them to open up their door to him so he can cover them in his love and bring an end to the cycle of suffering. Let's pray. Lord, you've given me the opportunity to speak here at church 3 times within the past year, and each message has ended with the same need to give control to you, whether it's our fears, our desires, or our distractions. This is not a coincidence. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. The only way for us to triumph in this battle is to let you fight it. We need to stop trying to rule our own lives and let you be the king of it. We surrender our fears to you and our incessant need to control ourselves. Let your love be the thing that overwhelms our hearts. I pray all these things in your Son's name. Amen. If anybody wants to pray with anybody, let me know. Otherwise, you're dismissed. Have a great day. I don't know where.